Hello and welcome to today's lessons in rudiment and theory. Today we are going to talk about elements of rhythm part 1. But before that, let's do a recap of the previous lesson. In the previous lesson, we learned about the general definition of music, and then we also learned about the definition of music theory. And we said that music theory is the study of music and its organizational characteristics. And then we define and examine aspects of music as how we perceive music orally, how we experience and appreciate music aesthetically, and how we symbolize music visually. Then we also talked about the purpose of music, and then we also said that the study of the language of music are yielding in three tenets, which is we learn to analyze music in order to gain understanding. Then we learn to analyze music in order to deepen our knowledge. Then we employ the knowledge gained in the study of music to stimulate and enhance our own creativity. Today we are going to talk about the elements of rhythm. But before that, let's look at our course objectives and then we can move on from there. So our learning goals for today is defining the durational symbols, defining durational values in music and how they relate to each other. And then we also describe durational symbols and their values. Now, when we talk of durational symbols, what does it mean? Durational symbols are symbols that represent time and action in musical space. So we can also say is that they delineate and mark or varying values of sound and silence in composition. But sometimes we can also make it known that they are proportional to one another as to how they may be divided from larger into smaller components. So when we talk of a durational symbol, they are symbols that are used to represent the relative length of a particular sound in music. Now, when we after this, what we are going to talk about is so what constitutes notes or what are the components of a musical note? Now, musical notes may have certain components. They may be open notes that are not filled, and they can be filled in notes as well. Now, looking at the example here, we know that this one is an open note head, and then it has an unshaded portion, and it looks like an oval shape. Then we also have the filling note head, which is being shaded. So in normal circumstances, in normal context, we can have an open note head and then a filled in note head. Now let's quickly go into some of the other components that we can have in a note. So we can have a note head, that's the first component of a note. We can have a note head, which is the oval shaped size. Then we can have the stem, that is the line connecting to the oval shape or the shaded parts. So the line connecting to the oval shape is the stem. We can have the flags. The flag is like the arc, okay, or the tail. Sometimes people call it the tail or the flags. So these are the flags. Then we can also have the beams. So these are the beams that are connecting the notes together. Now, in general perspective, or in the following examples that we have stated, they are not yet assigned to any particular value, only that their proportional values are in relation with one another. So, we are going to look at the basic durational values and their common names or the proper names for these values. And then we are also going to look at the names that are being used to call them in the United Kingdom and other countries as well. So the very first one is the double whole note. And the double whole note has a value of 8 count. It has a durational value of an 8 count. So if I press, I have to count up to 8 before I press another one. So it goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you could see that this one has a very long durational symbol, and it's called a brief. In the olden days, or in the ancient days, most of the ancient hymns use this kind of note values. And then I wonder, when you use these note values, we'll be in the church, and then church wouldn't close early. So um sometimes we have to be very fast in doing some of these things. So in order to do that, there was another note value called the whole note, or the semi-brief. The semi-brief is simply half of the brief. Okay, the brief is the grandfather of all, and now the semi-brief becomes the father of all the notes. And this one has a count of 4, because if the brief is having a count of 8, it means that semi means half. So semi will have 4 counts, and then this is how it goes: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It means that when you are playing or when you are singing, you just tap it once and you count the 4, okay, so that it will cater for the notes that it is. Now we move on to the next one, which is called the minim, or the half note. The minim, or the half note. Now in a minim or the half note, it has a stem which is attached to an open-headed note head. Okay, so this is how the symbol of a minim looks like. It has an open note head, and then a stem is being attached to it. Now with this one, the count of it is 2. So unlike the whole notes where you'll be counting 4, this one will be 2. So if I press on the keyboard, I'm expected to count up to 2. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So this is how the minim is also like. So we have the double whole notes, that is the brief. We have the whole notes, that is the semi-brief. We have the half note, that is the minim. Now let's go to the quarter note. Now the quarter note has become like the general count in the music perspective. Now with the quarter note, it has a shaded note head, and then it is being connected with a stem. So it's a shaded note head and is being connected with a stem, unlike the minim, which has an open note head and is being connected to the stem. This one is having a shaded note head and is being connected to the stem. And this one gives us the general regulative pulse. This one gives us a general regulative pulse. So if I'm counting now, count 1, 1, 1, 1. So it means that when I punch on the piano, this is how it goes: 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. The semi-brief is having 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But with the minim, it has 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And the quarter note or the crotchet has 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So this one gives you the general regulative pulse. Now let's go to the next one, which is known as the quaver, or the eighth note. The quaver, or the eighth note. The quaver is having a shaded note head with a stem and a flag. With a stem and a flag, or a tail. So this one is having just one tail, and it has the name a quaver, or an eighth note. Now this one is half of the crotchet. okay, half of the crochet. So it means that one of these is going to give you half of this. So if I'm playing the crochet as one, 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 we'll get a little bit faster rhythm as compared to the crochet. I will be getting one and one and one and one and one and one and one and. So you see it's a little bit faster than the crochet. The crochet is having one, 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 one. This one is one and one and one and one and. All right. Now let's go to the next one, which is the 16th note. The 16th note is almost like the 8th note, but in this case, it has a double flag. It has double flags. So it means that a note head, a stem, and two flags. Okay, that's the difference between the 8th note and then the 16th note. And then this one shows that semi-quiver. It means that this is half of this. It means that if that is half of this, this one is going to be um four of this one is going to give me one of this, two of this one is going to give me two of this one is going to give me one of this. Okay, so it means that this one semi-quiver has a rhythm or a pulse which is faster than this, and it's also faster, a lot more faster than this one. So if I'm demonstrating it, I'll get one two three, so 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. So in four of this will give you the general regulative pulse of this. So you see that one, 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 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. So you could see that I count 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, and this one is 1 1 1 1, and then the eighth note is one and one and one and one, and the 16th note will give me 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. All right, we have other notes and their values as well. Example is the 32nd note, which is also called the demi semiquaver, which is also faster, a lot more faster than all of them. And then we have the 64th note, which is hemi, demi, semi, quiver. So you could see that this one has three flags, this one has four flags. So these are the differences between this one. And then these ones are being used by violinists and other players, and you can see a lot more in as we move on. Now, if or since we've treated the notes and their values, we know what note value is, we know every note and its value. So let's look at the durational charts and see how it works. Now in the durational chart, so you could see my semi-brief here. That's my semi-brief. That's my semi-brief. Then this chart is giving me two minims. It means that two minims will give me one of this semi-brief. So two minims will give me one of this semi-brief. One minim, another minim will give me that. Then we can see that four crochets, 1 2 3 4 is giving me two minims, then one semi-brief. Four crochet is going to give me two minims and then one brief. So it means that in the count of this, I'll clap 1 2 1 2 3 4. Okay, and this one will be 1 2 and 1 2. This one will be 1 2 3 4. Okay, now the reason why I have done this one to the quavers is the quavers can be beamed together or it can be separated with the flags. So it has been beamed like this and it has been separated two. So if you have two or more semiquavers, then it means that you can use a beam to connect the two. And since this one is a single flag, it means that the beam is also going to be a single beam. And this one is, if this two is giving me one of this, it means that four of this is going to give me two of this, and then two of this will give me one of this. Okay, and if I have this, eight of this is going to give me one of this, and it will give me four of this, and it will give me two of this. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is why sometimes we call it the eighth note. Okay, so it means that eight of this is going to give me four of this, and two of this, and one of this. Is that all right? Now let's look at the next one, which is the 16th note. 16th note, I've already said it in the previous slide, that it has two flags. Okay, so you can rewrite this one in a different way. You can combine this one, so two beams or two flags. Then you can also have that. Okay, this one is three flags with a three beam, two flags with a two beam, one flag with a one beam, and so on and so forth. So the durational values are held in proportion to one another. So as we observe each other, we observe that they are proportionally related to the adjacent values. So you could see that this is related to this is related to this is related to that, and so on. Is that okay? So we move on to the next one, the rests. The rests. Now previously we said that notes values, or notes values are symbols that represent time and actions in musical space, and then they delineate and mark of varying values of sounds and silence. Now these are the silence. Okay, so a whole note rest is this, is a whole note rest. It is hanging below the line. Normally people get themselves confused with the two. This one is a half rest, which is lying on top of the line. So the difference between this and this is, this one is hanging on the line or hanging beneath the line. This one is resting on the line. Okay, so it has been assigned as such. Now this is a quarter note rest or a crochet rest. So it is in the form of a zigzag. So this is how a quarter rest is. Now an eighth rest, it looks like this. Maybe someone will say a seven. So this is an eighth rest. This is how it looks like. And then because of the flag having one flag, the cross section is also one, as compared to the 16th note. The 16th note has two flags, and so has this two. The third second rest has three flags, and so has this, and so on and so forth. Now, dotted notes. When we talk of a dotted note, what does it mean? A dotted note will mean that an additional note has been added to the original duration. Okay, so we can say that durational values may be non-dotted or dotted, and a dotted value have three main interpretation. Okay, but before that, we are saying that a dotted value may represent the addition of half of the original duration. It means that when I have a semi-brief and I add a dot to it, half of the semi-brief is what? Is 2. So 2 plus 4 becomes 6. So if I am to play it, I'll count 6 times. So I play a dotted semi-brief and I'll get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Before the next one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so a dotted um a dotted notes may represent the addition of half of the original duration to it. Now, durational values may have small periods appended to them originally, and we've said that. So we are now coming to look at the three different interpretations of a dotted note value. Now, the first one is the dot represents the addition of half of the original value. And the second one is the dotted value may divide it into two lower dot values. We'll explain it in the upcoming slides with examples. Then the third one is the dotted value may divide it into three non-dotted values. And this potential division into three is critical for comprehending compound meters. Okay, when we zoom into time signature, we also look at all these things. So let's look at the first example. In the first example, this one is having a dot. And what is this called? A minim. A minim originally has two counts. So two counts, when you split it in the down part, you will see that 2 plus half of 2, which is 1. Okay, 2 plus 1 gives you 3. It means that a crochet and a minim. So if I'm to play a dotted minim, I'm going to count up to 3, and this is how it goes: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it means that this one has been added to this one to give me the durational value of this dotted minim. Now so this is half of a minim. This is half of a minim, and then it's been added to the minim, and then you get a 3 count. Now let's move on to the next one, which is a dotted value may be divisible into 3 non-dotted values. That's the second one. We said that a dotted value has 3 interpretations. We've done the first one, which is the dot represents the addition of half of the original value. Now the second one is a dotted value may be visible into 3 non-dotted values. So let's look at this example. It's the same way as we said over there. This one is like a minim and half of the minim, which is a crochet. Now the interpretation of this is also meaning that this one can be divisible into 3 non-dotted values. That means that we have one crochet, another crochet, and another crochet. So 3 of this one can also mean 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So this is what this interpretation means, that a dotted value may also be divisible into 3 non-dotted values. Now let's try and then see the third interpretation. The third interpretation is also talking about a dotted value may be divisible into 2 smaller dotted values. A dotted value may be divisible into 2 smaller dotted values. And what do I mean by this? Let's look at this. Let's look at this. And this one, it's very critical for comprehending compound meter. We won't dive into this too much, but I'm explaining how this one can be divisible into 2 smaller dotted values. So you could see that this one is already having a duration of 1. Then this one is adding half of this value, which is 1.5. This one is also 1.5. 1.5 plus 1.5 will give us 3. We are not going deep down into this one, but when we get there, we'll explain further, and then you would understand it very well. But you should know that this one can really give us 2 smaller dotted values. Is that okay? Now let's go to the next slide. Dotted notes. So other dotted notes values can be described as this. So a dotted semi-brief will have either three minims. Okay, a dotted semi-brief will have three minims. A dotted minim will have three crotchets. So a dotted minim will have three crotchets. Now when we move to the next slide, a dotted crochet will have three quavers. A dotted crochet is going to have three quavers, meaning this two will give me one crochet and this one added to it, and this one becomes the dot and it will give me three quavers. Now a dotted quiver is like this. So I explained that this two is a crochet, then this dot now becomes a quiver. So a quiver has been added to this crochet. So this one is also written like this, a crochet being tied to a quiver. And then the last one is a dotted quiver will give me a quiver tied to a semi-quiver. So this one can also written as this. We have a lot of this one and its interpretation. So it depends on how the composer wants to put them in a piece of music, and then you get what you need to get. So we are looking at the overview of the whole thing. You should understand the following: that musical time is represented by symbols called durational values. They may be dotted or non-dotted. So we discussed that musical time is represented by durational values, and then they can have a dot, and then they can also be non-dotted. We should also understand that durational values are proportional to one another. We said it in the previous slides that they come together and they are directly proportional to each other. Okay, so if we have a semi-brief, we can have a minim just coming after a semi-brief, and so on and so forth. So they are directly proportional to one another. And then we can also say that durational values have equivalent rest values. So if they are directional proportional to others, they have equivalent rest values. Thank you so much for being with us all this time, and we hope to see you next time in our next lesson. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.